Welcome back, this is the Clay Golem, this is Foundry VTT, and this is our second video looking at some macros that we can do with Sequencer. And just playing around, showing you some of the things that you can do if you want to. And in this video what we're looking at is basically a tripwire trap that if they trigger it, it will fire off a whole bunch of arrows in their general direction and they'll need to make a saving throw to avoid it. So what I've got for this is a couple of things I've set up. First of all, I've got this tile over here with an arrow icon on it. This is where we are firing from. So this is the trap mechanism that fires the arrows out, and I've stuck it sort of in this bookcase. Now normally I wouldn't have an image on it and I wouldn't have it visible, but for video purposes, just so you can see, that's where we're firing from. Now when those arrows fire, they got to fire to somewhere. So I have another tile over here. Again, I've put an image on it for your purposes, but normally I wouldn't. And I've got a target tile over here. So when this is triggered, this trap will fire arrows from the right over towards the shield on the left, so you can see that. Now to get this to work, we've got a couple of different things going on. First of all, because we're moving from one tile to another, I have got the tagger mod installed because that makes it much easier to identify which tile is talking to which tile, and especially if you change scenes, Foundry resets its IDs for tiles and things, so tagger is a way of getting around that. So tagger is very useful because we can name the tile whatever we want. I've also got Sequencer in, of course. I don't need Monk's token bar. I've just got that in for something else I was playing with. I have got Monk's active tile triggers because these are tiles and we want an actual trigger that we want to use as well. And I've got MIDI QOL in, as well as my basic effects and, of course, Dice So Nice. So the reason why I want MIDI QOL in is what it allows us to do. It allows us to use our Monk's active tile trigger to trigger a macro, and that macro makes an attack using MIDI QOL that then we can animate based on the results of that attack. That will make sense in a minute, I promise you. So because we're making attack, what we need is an attack actor. So I created an actor that I just called arrow trap. So this is who's going to make the attack. And I've given it an attack action, which I've called arrow attack. So when this trap is triggered, the arrow trap actor is going to make an attack using its arrow attack ability. And that arrow attack ability, if I just go into edit here, I didn't bother putting details in, descriptions and things. What I've said basically is, look, this is basically equivalent to a simple range short bow kind of attack. But importantly, the action type down here, if you see under weapon attack, is saving throw. So it's not going to force them to do anything other than make a saving throw. If they fail that saving throw, the damage is going to be 4d6 piercing damage. And you can see just at the bottom here, the saving throw they need is a dexterity DC 12. So the actor is the one that's actually making that attack for us. Okay, now with MIDI QOL installed, I do get this tab. Now because this is a trap that requires a dexterity save, I decided I'm going to use this handy little function here to say if the target saves, the item does no damage. So normally lots of saving throws, most saving throws, rules as written, is if you make the saving throw you take half damage. If you fail the saving throw you take full damage. So my MIDI settings are following those rules, but I can override them for this particular item when it makes it attack and say, well look, you either get out of the way or you don't. So you take no damage if you make that saving throw in this instance. So that's what I've got that for, and that's another little thing that MIDI is quite useful for, is changing those little rules for particular items if you want to. Okay, so we've got our actor. Now he doesn't need to be on here because he's going to make the attack, but it doesn't matter that he's not on there as long as the actor exists. So let's give a quick little demonstration and hope this works as smoothly as we should. Let's say this individual here trips the tripwire, and it's going to run this macro I have down here called Tripwire Arrow Trap. So let's click that, and immediately, I'll just bring up the chat for you, immediately it's going to say, oh, you need to make a saving throw. Now oddly enough, this is going to be that dexterity saving throw. Let's roll that. A 19. It's going to roll the damage, but hopefully you saw and heard arrows fly from over here across the room to over here. They didn't hit the token because she passed her saving throw and it didn't do any damage. Right, so I'm going to try not to talk over it this time. We're going to do another roll. I'm going to do disadvantage this time, so hopefully we can get her to fail. So watch for the animation. Okay, so she passed it again, but hopefully you saw the animation this time. Let's do another disadvantage. Hopefully we shall actually get hit sooner or later. That's good. Okay, now hopefully you noticed the difference. So three things happened there. One, she took damage from the attack, as you would expect, because she failed her saving throw. The second thing is the arrows did not fly right across the room. They actually flew into the token. And the third thing you may have noticed is that sound, that arrow noise, was slightly different. So I've got one sound if they fly across the room and miss, and I've got a different sound if they actually fly into the target and hit. So it's a nice little way of showing whether that trap hit or not. Different sounds depending what it is, however you want to do that, which is really cool. So what does this actually look like as a macro? So let's open that up, and it's probably not as complicated as you fear it might be. So I'm just going to, I will zoom in the edit, so hopefully you can see that nice and big now. So let's walk through what this is doing. Now remember, we have got two tiles set up. One of those tiles is the origin of the attack, the trap attack, and the other one is the target of where those arrows are going to go. So this first line here, what we want to do is we want to get the, so the trap actor, we want to find out who is going to be making the attack. So we can define that. It's my actor called Arrow Trap. So our trap actor, we're going to look in the game actors and get the name for the arrow trap, or rather use the name for the arrow trap. That is going to be our trap actor. Find the actor called Arrow Trap. We're going to call that our trap actor. And then what is the attack that is being used that's on that actor? So that trap item, or attack item you could call it, is look on that trap actor, look for its items, and look for the item called Arrow Attack. So what that means is on my Arrow Trap actor, I could have lots of different types of attack that different macros access the same actor and just choose the relevant attack. It means you don't have to have a different actor for every single trap you have. You could just have one actor called traps and then give them the different powers, and then you just look up and say that for this trap, that's the attack I want them to use. Okay, so that's what that first bit does. Now this next bit, this is where we're talking to MIDI QOL. Okay, so we want a new MIDI QOL and we want to look at the trap workflow. We are going to be using the trap actor and that item with a target of the token. So the token that is currently selected, or the token that has triggered the event. So it's asking it to go and do that, which is great. And remember that trap item is a saving throw. So what it's saying to MIDI is, hey, look at that actor. That actor's going to make an attack. It's going to use that item, so make an attack with that item. That item is going to force a saving throw. This next line, this hooks, it says once. So once MIDI QOL roll is complete. So it's going to wait for that saving throw to be made. It's not going to try and do anything until we've got that. MIDI QOL has handled that roll, and then we're going to pass back the result of that roll. Okay, so we know whether that roll was successful or not for that attack. We're then going to, and this is not, you don't necessarily have to do it in this order. This is just the order that I've done it in. We're then going to want to define where we want our animation coming from and coming to. So we're setting here and saying, hey, our trap tile, so we're going to name our trap tile, and this is going to use tagger to get the tag, or get the ID for the tile that has the tagger name of arrow launcher. So this tile over here is called arrow launcher. So we're now saying that's the trap tile, is arrow launcher. And then on the next line we're saying, well, what's the target tile? And we're doing the same thing. And this tile just on the left there with the shield is called missed target. In other words, if we miss the actor we're shooting at, that's where it's going to go. So that's what those two lines are doing. They're saying, let's find out what the actual names are for those two tiles we're going to launch from and we're going to launch to. Now what we need to, what we want to say is, well, what is the target we are actually firing at? And this is where we are using that result from MIDI QOL. So this line here, what this is saying is our actual target of our trap, so our trap target is, if the saving throw failed, it's going to be the token. If it's not the token, we want it to be target tile. And remember, just above that, we defined target tile as being this missed target. So this is basically saying, where are we going to shoot to? If they failed their save, we shoot the token. If they made their save, we shoot this target. That's it. That's all that's doing. Now this next line is doing very, very similar, but rather than saying which token, sorry, whether we're firing at the token or the missed target, what it's saying is, well, let's pick the right sound effect we want. So if we fail that save, we want this sound that I've called many arrows hit. And if it doesn't, if they do make the save, it's going to default and use the many arrows miss. Just a couple of sound files I pulled off the internet. So we've set up all of the things we wanted to do. And now we're going to actually start that sequence and get it to actually do the thing we want to. So just like before, we want it to do an effect. The effect is going to use a file from, in my instance, I'm using JB2A, and I've chosen an arrow image that I want to use for that. So that's the effect we're going to be. Where do we want it? Well, we want it at location of trap tile. Remember, we defined trap tile up here as being that one with my picture of an arrow on it. Okay, so that's where we're going to animate this. But we want to stretch to. So the animation is going to start there at that location, and we're going to stretch it to our trap target. Now remember, trap target depends on whether they made that saving throw or not. This random offset is just whether you want it to land exactly in the same place every time, or if you want it to be slightly scattered. And we've got a whole bunch of arrows. If we put them all on top of each other, it's only going to look like one arrow. So we've got a bit of random offset there, so they start and finish in slightly different positions. And it's going to repeat that animation, okay, with a short duration in between. So we don't just get the one arrow, we get several arrows going off. So that is all that's doing. Use this picture, start it here, stretch it to here, and repeat that. We've also got it to define a sound. We want to play a sound as part of this sequence. And the file we want to play is whatever is in arrow sound. And we defined that up here. Arrow sound depends on whether they've passed or failed that saving throw. So the sequence is really quite simple. It's, hey, play this animation, start it there, finish it there, and repeat it. Hey, and play a sound as well. It's this top bit that is determining what those targets are, where we're starting and finishing our animation, which sound to play, based on whether that MIDI QOL saving throw was successful or not. And unlike in the last video, I have remembered to put the actual play the darn sequence on, which, if you remember, we had the macro and it didn't work because I forgot to tell it. Well, it worked, it just, we couldn't see anything because I forgot to tell it to play it. So that is, it's not a huge macro, and it's very effective. It's easier to see if you've got like the, you know, where it's traveling to, if we put the target out of the way. So again, I'm going to roll for Haley now. It's going to auto roll for her. She's going to make that saving throw. And we get those arrows, with those arrows making that particular sound where they miss. We can do it again. She's going to fail it this time. Do you now notice there's a much wetter, soggier sound to those arrows? And it's just killed Haley outright. So that is what our macro does, and it's relatively quite straightforward. But you can do all sorts of things with this. I mean, I've chosen arrows. It could be a laser beam. It could be, we could change the animation to be, you know, fire and things. So remember, we've got access to JB2A through the sequencer database, and we could search for fire and we could change that animation. No, I don't want, I want actual, like something like breath weapon. We could change that animation. I wonder if I want, not cone, let's find line. There we go. Let's change our animation to be this instead, because why not? So we very easily, the only place we're saying what that animation is right there. So we can paste in that different image to use for that, and now when we run it, it will work exactly the same. We've just got a different image. And there we go, you can see much clearer that that animation is stretching from our initial point all the way over to our target. Let's see if we can do that again. Do it advantage, see if we can get it to pass it this time. There we go, natural 20, so it should stretch over to our shield icon. There we go, stretching all the way across exactly how we'd want it. Now, it might look like a slightly strange animation because with the arrows, remember, I had repeats. So we got several of them. So we're getting several of those breath weapons. That might not be what you want, but you can just tweak it and take them out. Obviously, we're also still using the same sound effects of the flying arrows, so that might not make sense either. But as you can see, once you've got the core macro there, you can just duplicate and copy that and have it for an arrow trap, for a fire trap, for however you want to do it. And then it's just a case of how are you triggering that macro. So in theory, you can trigger that macro, of course, just by using a Monk's Active Tile trigger, and you just slap in the trigger in there, and you say on actions, I want you to run the macro, and we select the macro we want to run. Lovely jubbly, and then that will, of course, will do that. Here we go, activate the tile, and that should, I haven't got an actor selected, that's why that's not liked it. Now I have, weirdly enough, had a few little problems of getting this macro. The macro works perfectly. There we go. Yeah, see, notice that went in two different directions. There's something slightly odd when I use the monk's tile to trigger the macro. The macro is not the problem, it works perfectly. If anybody knows the answer to that, that would be great. Let's watch this animation again. Okay, so it's all going towards her. If I move my triggering tile up here, might make it slightly easier. Let's roll with advantage, so it should miss. Everything looks fine. Did she actually fail her saving throw that time? No, see, she passed her saving throw, but it still tried to attack her. It didn't do damage, but it still animated towards her. So I think it's a MIDI setting rather than the macro, because you've seen the macro working, it's absolutely perfect. If any of you got any ideas why triggering the macro through here, because that's the only difference, is that we're triggering this using run macro here, and it goes slightly different from when we just run it normally. So if anybody knows, that would be really, really useful, because that doesn't make a lot of sense and I haven't been able to sort that out. But the macro itself is perfect. Now, when we get problems with macros, I do just want to quickly cover, because some people made some comments on the previous video that was very, very much introductory, and some things can get very confusing, but people pointed out and said, oh, well, why don't you, when you're debugging, just open console? And they are absolutely correct. So within the Foundry application, if I press F12, it brings up this console down the side here. And this is really useful for if you're debugging stuff. So if I run this macro with that open, you will see that this starts showing you things down here as Foundry does stuff. So it's working out the saves. Boom. There we go. Interestingly, it's just brought up a whole nonsense about the unable to simplify formula for wild shape. Not relevant to what we're doing. But it does show you those bugs. Now that, oh sorry, that's a warning rather than anything else. But if you start seeing red bits like this, it can give you a good idea. Token Druid test could not roll save check. So that might be part of the issue that was happening with the tokens. Now, for me personally, if I'm doing code and stuff, I prefer to use Visual Studio. So this is that exact same macro in Visual Studio, and you can see everything here, but you can see it's color coded. And Visual Studio will help you write macros, and it will help you debug them. So if I remove that bracket from there, you can see it's giving me, it's an error here. It's like, well, hang on a minute, I was expecting a bracket somewhere. Now, I don't necessarily tell you where, but it is telling you I was expecting a bracket, so it can help debug that. Now, sometimes if you take off bits, it won't always quite know what you're trying to do, but if you're writing it as you go, it gets very good at telling you what the problem is. So again, I've got a red bracket up here. It's saying, hang on a minute, this red bracket, there's a problem with this bracket. And down here, it's giving me and saying, hang on a minute, I was expecting a statement or something like that. And it's because I'm missing something. But if you are writing from scratch, so if I start a new sequence in here, you can see that is starting to already, just with N, it's starting to, there we go, fill in what I may want it to be. I want new sequence, thank you very much. And then I can start doing these things, and I can just indent those. So I want a new effect, and it just prompts you as you go. So it's really, really useful. I use this a lot. I do a lot of work with JSON files as part of my job, and it just makes life really easy because it debugs for me. So there, where I went open bracket, it's automatically given me the closed bracket as well. When I open quote marks, it's automatically given me the close quote marks as well, so I can't forget it. I can then paste in whatever it might be, my thing there, and then I can end the line. So it's just going to support me through that. So not a hugely long video, just wanted to show you something else rather than just it always being, you know, the real basics here of what you can do. Let's get rid of that. But nice little macro, nice and easy to write relatively speaking, but you get some great effects. You can use it for all sorts of things, and it doesn't have to be a trap, of course. You could completely remove the need for the roll and just have it as a special effect that happens when they go over a tile. So you could use it to light an area up when they go over a tile. Just using sequencer, you can play sound effects. It might be that, you know, you have a tile that and your sound effect is wet squishy footprints. So every time the token makes a move, it goes squelch, 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 squelch. You absolutely could do that. Okay, nice and easy. You could do that. You can have it play little particle effects around every time you take a step, so it makes a squelch noise. It makes a small particle effect, you know, as dust kicks up or something like that. You know, all sorts of things you can do, and all of those would be based off a very similar macro to this one, where you are finding out who your people are, what your targets are, and things like that, and then choosing your animation to play from one point to another, or just play where it is, or choose a sound depending on variables, and some links into MIDI QOL. Now, of course, we've done roll complete. We were using a saving throw because the trap item required a saving throw. If we changed the trap item and made it a standard attack against an armor class, you absolutely could do this based on, depending, you know, we wait for that result. Was that result, instead of instead of that being a checking to see if the saving throw failed or not, we could be doing to check to see if we hit their armor class or not. If you hit their armor class, or rather, so yeah, if you hit their armor class, the arrows hit them and it does damage. If it didn't hit their armor class, the arrows fly off and miss that particular actor and land somewhere else, and obviously won't do the damage. So there's multiple different ways you can use these tags into MIDI depending on what kind of attack you want. So I hope that was useful. Relatively short video, just wanted to show off there's more stuff that you can do, but there is tons of it, tons and tons and tons. So you just kind of really need to go and play and look at those different hooks of how can we use what's called the API from other modules to say, hey, I want MIDI to go and do something for me and then tell me what the result was, and my actions are going to be based on that result. So all of those kind of things that you can do. And in the last video we looked through on the wiki for sequencer, just the kind of stuff you could do with scrolling text. We mentioned about sounds, we've shown that in here, and the fact that we can choose different sounds as well, which is all pretty cool. But anyway, that's it for this particular video. I hope that's been useful. If anybody does have a little, you know, an idea of what my I think it's a MIDI QOL setting might be that is just interrupting my macro running correctly when I use it, trigger it through monks. Very bizarre. No reason I can think of that would work like that. But yeah, if you do know, let me know. That would be great. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one.